Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Forge of Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Alex Uli, and today I'm joined by a special guest, Dr. John Edeen. Dr. John Edeen is a doctor in San Antonio, Texas, and an orthopedic doctor.
Right,
and
pediatric orthopedics.
Pediatric orthopedics, and he's also a member of or associated with the Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership, and we're going to talk a little bit about that organization, about Dr. Edeen's efforts to help preserve the right to keep and bear arms, specifically from a medical standpoint. So, Doctor, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, it's great to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad we finally got to sit down for a podcast. We've known each other for a few years. I don't remember when we met first. It may have been at the Legally Armed in Detroit event with Rick Hector.
Yeah, because I've done that several times, and also at GRPC.
GRPC, yeah.
Because I go to most of those as well.
But it's been at least 3 or 4 years that we've been acquainted and enjoyed a few cigars together as well. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, Dr. What that smokes cigars. It's a good thing.
That's right. That's right. So we're actually, as you can see, if you're watching the podcast by video, we're at the NRA Annual Meeting in Houston, Texas, and we're on the media row they call the Voices of the Second Amendment. So it's a relatively new initiative. I think last year was the first time they did this, and we're recording from there this year in Houston. I think it's been great, and I'm glad you could join us here, Doctor. So
well, I'm happy to be here. I really am.
Yeah. So with if you would, just before we get into the Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership, would you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, how you got into firearms, and
Sure.
and how you sort of got into weaving your medical practice and expertise into the firearms world?
Yeah, sure. So I do pediatric orthopedic surgery. I went to college and medical school in New York at Columbia University. After I finished that I went in the Navy, and I did orthopedic and internship and residency. I also spent 2 years as the medical officer on the USS Peleliu, which is an amphibious assault ship, and now we're seeing the USS America, which is the LHA is the same class as the Peleliu was. Peleliu was LHA 5, America's LHA 6. It's a completely different ship. They totally changed it. I mean, we had a well deck, America doesn't. So it's kind of a different thing.
Yeah.
After that, I spent 2 years as an orthopedic surgeon at the Naval Hospital in Jacksonville, Florida, and I did a deployment to Somalia when we were leaving Somalia back in 1994. And then I did a pediatric orthopedic fellowship at the Shriners Hospital in Springfield, Massachusetts. And during that, I actually did a little traveling. We did clinics in Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and the island of Cyprus and other places. So in the Mediterranean. And we would take those kids and we'd bring them back to Springfield, Massachusetts, and we would do surgery to correct their issues. It was very eye-opening, I can tell you.
Yeah, I imagine.
You see kids with a teenage kid with a completely untreated club foot. You never see that in the United States. Those kids don't get treated. When they're kids.
Mm-hmm.
This kid, so it's a totally different deal. So it really expands your medical knowledge.
Yeah.
So then, as far as the gun thing goes, the first time I shot a gun was actually the guy that I replaced on the Peleliu. He was a gun guy, and he took me out, and I remember shooting a 6-inch 6.86 revolver.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I recognize it. In fact, I have one.
Yeah, I do as well. Yeah. My father gave it to me.
Yeah, and so that kind of got me started. And then when I was a resident, I would play racquetball with my neighbor. He was a pathology resident, and he dislocated his kneecap when we were playing one time. So he was kind of laid up, and he goes, I got these guns. Let's go up in the range up in the Oakland Hills, and we'll shoot some guns. I said, okay, that sounds like fun. And then right after that, the Rodney King thing started. And so I ended up buying myself a Beretta 92. And that was kind of the beginning of it. When I moved to Jacksonville, I joined a gun club and, one thing after another. And the reason I got into the Second Amendment stuff was because I would listen to Armed American Radio.
Okay.
And so Mark used to do these events at Gander Mountain stores. And there's one not very far from here is where I met Mark.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so my partner and I, we drove out. It was during it was in 2013, I guess it was, when we were having a lot of ammo shortages. And Gander Mountain had a crap load of ammo. So my partner and I said, let's score some ammo. Let's go to this thing. So we did. when I met Mark, and Mark and I, we talked for, I don't know how long, but we really hit it off and became really good friends. And he invited me to come to the NRA meeting in Houston that year. So I met him, I met him there, and he introduced me to Massad Ayoob. And I'm like, oh, yeah, because and now I've probably done just about everything that Mass has done. I've done, up to Mag 180, and I've done the instructor thing. The only thing I haven't done was the testifying.
Okay.
For instructor thing.
Yeah.
But Mass has become a good friend and mentor for me.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, I was just up at the Rangemaster Tech Conference, and I'm a Rangemaster instructor as well. You and I did the thing with Rick Ector. So,
right.
I don't know if you know about this, but we taught like 1,200 women over a weekend.
Yeah.
I think one year we did like 1,800.
Yeah.
And just phenomenal. In fact, I remember one of the girls was shooting, and every time she shot, she would wince. And I finally said, "Are you okay?" She goes, "Well, I just got out of the hospital. I got shot in the chest, and my ribs still hurt."
Wow.
She had had a thoracotomy from a gunshot wound in the chest.
Oh my.
So I had to go tell Rick. I said, "Rick, you need to meet this girl."
Yeah.
And Rick was like, "Yeah, this is why I do this thing."
Yeah.
And it really hit home for me personally.
Yeah.
As an instructor, I thought it was pretty phenomenal stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, after meeting Mark at the NRA and meeting Massad Ayoob, he said, "Well, why don't you come to Gun Rights Policy Conference? It's in Houston, in a few months."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Well, I got to look at my schedule, but I'll try to make it." So I did, and I went to Gun Rights Policy Conference, and there was a guy named Tim Wheeler who talked about this organization, Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership. And at that time, I was trying to get the County Medical Society to come out with a statement that where we should allow concealed carry in hospitals. But of course, it got voted down 22-2. And so I told Tim about this. He goes, "Yeah, that doesn't surprise me." And so that's how I got involved with Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership. And now I'm the membership director. I've been with DRGO for 13 years.
How long have you been the membership director?
Pretty much not very far after.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think Tim realized that I was going to be an asset.
Yeah.
And then when I came up to him and I introduced myself, he goes, "Wow, you know how rare you are." An orthopedic surgeon who wants to put himself out there for gun rights. So
right.
I said, yeah. I've testified in front of the Texas House and Senate for a number of things, including the constitutional carry that we got passed.
Yeah.
And so and I've interacted with a lot of people, a lot of the GOA people in Texas. They're very active and they've done some really good work there.
Yeah.
So, I think we're all really one big tent.
And Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership, was it started by the Second Amendment Foundation, or was it a separate?
It wasn't. It
Okay.
was actually started as part of the, what's the name of the organization? It's like a think tank in California.
Okay.
I'll think of it in a little bit. But Tim was part of, became part of that.
Okay.
I mean, the reason why DRGO started was because Tim realized that there was so much bias in the literature in California, in the medical literature, and he was like, this can't go. I got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And he was one of the guys that actually testified against the funding of the CDC.
Okay.
Doing the bias research, and they got the Hughes Amendment passed.
Okay.
So he was actually instrumental. He was one of the 4 people that testified in front of the Congressional Committee.
Okay.
And so he's now since retired and stepped away, but he's still, I still get an email from him every once in a while.
So I assume are all members doctors?
No.
Okay.
In fact, we have some lawyers that are even.
Okay.
Believe it or not.
Okay.
But you could be a doctor or a nurse. We have guys that are EMTs. People, just regular people can join too.
Okay.
And it's like $35, and that's it. And it's not very expensive. And since we're part of the Second Amendment Foundation, it's never.
Okay. So when did it become part of the Second Amendment Foundation? Do you know the timeline there?
About
as long as I've known about it,
Yeah, 7 or 8 years ago,
Okay.
probably, maybe 10.
so you were part of it before then.
I
Before
was part of it since 2013.
Okay,
So it had to be before 2013 even.
gotcha.
Um,
So what are some of the things? I mean, obviously, Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership wants to advocate for the Second Amendment from a medical perspective, but what is part of its mission? What is it intended to do?
Basically, the first thing that we do is we look at the medical literature,
Mhm.
and when we see bias, this is Tim Wheeler's thing. We look at the bias in the literature and then critique it and put it out there. We have a website. It's called DRGO.us. It's Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership. And so we have a lot of really good articles in there. There's a lot of information. But, and we have a lot of stuff on Facebook too.
Okay, I just put
We get we see a biased, thing from the AMA or JAMA or whatever, and we'll critique that and we'll even do editorials. We've also, had some amicus briefs in some of like the Dots versus Glots case in Florida.
okay.
We were involved in that. That was about 2010, I think, or something, before I was with DRGO. But maybe so we'll do some advocacy stuff as well.
Yeah. I put up the website for those watching the podcast by video. I put up the website on the screen there. It's drgo.us. And you can see they've got, I put up the mission statement here, but they've got an article archive, and you can see Tim Wheeler, Robert Young, John Edeen, and Glenn Otero listed there as contributors.
Right.
And there's just a document archive. There's a plethora of information here available about all the issues.
Great position statements, one thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that's, intellectual ammunition that you can use in both arguing with your friends and colleagues, but also if there are legal stuff coming up in the legislature, they're trying to pass laws that might be objectionable to you.
Yeah.
There's some stuff in here that you can use to back up your arguments with.
Yeah.
There's a lot of medical research here. There's, for instance, the suppressor stuff that's been going on lately. We have a lot of states that now have legalized suppressors, but there are also oppressor states that are trying to outlaw suppressors. And the ENT doctors, about a year ago, actually set out a position statement that says that suppressors are the best way to protect hearing. And that because not only do they protect the hearing of the person who's shooting, but they also protect the hearing of people that are standing by and may not be protected.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to understand that, a gunshot is about 175 decibels, and that one shot is enough to give you permanent hearing.
Yeah.
And so it's very important to protect your hearing with, a suppressor and in addition, muffs and plugs and whatever else you can do. But you have to understand that noise not only goes into your ear, but it goes into your skull, and you get bone conductive membrane. Excuse me. And that, if you get a loud, vibration to your skull, that can also cause hearing.
Yeah.
We have a really good paper that we actually put in our website from 2017. It was put out by a bunch of ENT people, one of which was Tim Wheeler, of course. But there were also guys that were neurologists, and they're the guys that actually study sensory neurons.
Okay.
And it's a phenomenal paper. It talks about the level of sound. It also has like photomicrographs of the inner ear and the cochlea, of the hair cells, and like before normal healthy ones, and then ones that have been damaged by sound.
Yeah.
And so this is the kind of stuff that you can take and give it to your representatives in government and say, look, this is what's going on. In fact, Virginia, they just passed all these bills that were anti-gun. Well, some of our doctors actually testified in front of the committees, and they gave them this information, and they actually killed the bill that was going to outlaw suppressors because of that. And so, yes, it can be effective. You can make a difference.
Yeah. And like you said, that there are many states that are trying to outlaw or already outlaw suppressors. but there's also this push at the federal level, right, with the Hearing Protection Act and other initiatives to try to. There's currently a lawsuit pending in federal court to try to overturn or to challenge the inclusion of suppressors in the National Firearms Act. And so this material is very persuasive material for those efforts as well.
And so if you can get this information to your personal representatives and say, hey, look, this is what the science says. You can make an argument based on science, not on, the criminals will have suppressors and nobody will be able to hear them kill somebody.
Right.
Which is a bunch of crap, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. They're not silencers.
No, they're
right.
not. They don't make it silent. They lower the signature by about 30 decibels.
Yeah.
But 170 to 140 decibels is still pretty dang loud.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hearing safe, sometimes it's not hearing safe. Once you get down, into the 100 decibel range, then it's probably more hearing safe. But you probably should still wear plugs and muffs and even when you're using a suppressor. It's like a 22. It muffles it pretty much. I've shot some 22s where the bolt running back and forth was louder than the signature.
Yeah.
The or the gunshot.
Which is kind of an odd experience the first time you hear it.
Yes.
To hear the bullet.
You usually don't hear it. You usually hear bang.
Yeah.
Not.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
So it's kind of an interesting way to go.
Yeah.
So
I've got the position paper pulled up here on the screen actually, and I'd like you to, if you don't mind, I'm going to scroll down to what you were referring to, some of these images of the inner ear. Could you tell us a little bit about what's going on here in some of these images?
So, the cochlea is a snail-shaped organ that, the ear basically is your outer ear, the ear canal, your eardrum. There are 3 little bones attached to the eardrum. And so when the sound hits the eardrum, it causes slight vibrations, which are transmitted through those 3 little bones. And there's something called the oval window where the last bone is attached to, and that vibrates back and forth, and that causes a fluid wave in the cochlea. And so the cochlea is wider and it's opening and it gets more and more narrow. So basically when the sound waves reach the resonance of where you are in the cochlea, it causes those little hairs to vibrate, and that's how you perceive sound. That goes, from your it stimulates the nerve, it goes into your brain. That's how you hear sound. Okay. But if you have a huge vibration, if there's enough of a wave, it can actually damage those little hair cells, and they do not regenerate. Once you kill them, they're dead. Now, most of us have probably experienced shooting a gun and then having ringing in their ears.
Mm-hmm.
Either like their ear muff gets, doesn't seal properly, or their earplug comes loose or whatever. Well, that ringing in your ears is your hair cells dying.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, because they are they're just like the little rods and cones in your eyes for light. They're the kind of the rods and cones in your ear for hearing.
Okay.
And so you lose those, you lose some of your hearing. Me personally, I've got some pretty bad hearing loss.
Yeah. From the military and
military and from loud rock and roll music when
Yeah.
I was a teenager, and then of course from firing guns.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the nice thing about the suppressor is that it dampens the sound at the source, and so you don't get that blast of shockwave from a firearm, and you don't get the eardrum waving back and forth, and you don't get the shockwave going into the skull that gives direct sensory neural vibrations into the cochlea. So it's definitely the best way to deal with it. And the ENT guys, the science says it.
Yeah.
They're the experts. I'm a bone doctor, but not those bones.
Yeah.
I do the arms and the legs, and I don't do the ear bones. But we all learn about this stuff, and science is science. Let's face it.
Yeah.
This stuff is irrefutable. It's not like climate change.
Right. Yeah. Where there's a legitimate debate, right? This is pretty solid evidence, right?
Claremont Foundation. That's what it was.
Okay.
I knew it would take me a while.
That started DRGO?
DRGO was part of the Claremont Foundation
okay.
at the beginning, and then the Second Amendment Foundation took them over. I knew I remember.
There you go. I'm going to scroll down a little bit more here because there's another graphic I want to show. You were saying that a firearm it typically emits 170 decibels approximately.
Give or take. Yeah. It's a logarithmic scale, by the way.
Okay. Explain that.
So 10 decibels is X. 20 decibels is 10X.
It's not 2X, it's 10X. Yeah.
And 30 decibels is 100X.
Mm-hmm.
And 40 is 1000X.
Yep.
So it goes up by tens rather than by ones.
Okay.
So, plus 70 decibels is a lot of energy.
And so a reduction of 30 to 40 is very significant as well, right? So what a suppressor can accomplish.
Sometimes less.
Right. Yeah.
In effect.
So if you couple, so you're going to take a typical firearm signature from 170 to 140 or 130, depending on still very loud. And then if you couple that with hearing protection, right, which is another 25 to 40 decibels, probably.
That's a very effective way of protecting your hearing.
Right. So you're down to about 100 decibels, right? Which is still, that's still about the sound of a lawnmower, according to this graphic that I'm putting. So it's still very loud, even with a suppressor, even with hearing protection.
Exposure can still cause damage. That's
right.
The other thing. It's not only like, you have the short, sharp thing, but it's also a prolonged exposure can cause damage as well.
Yeah.
So you have to be aware of both of those effects.
So if somebody says, well, why would I need a suppressor if I'm wearing hearing protection? Well, the hearing protection still only gets you to the 130, 140 decibel range, right? Which is, according to this chart, between a jackhammer and a firecracker. Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
so
it's not good.
Still not good.
No, it's not good.
So that's part of the motivation, right, behind trying to remove the regulations and prohibitions on suppressors. Yeah.
Sure.
All right. So that's one of the issues. We're not going to be able to get into all the issues that DRGO helps address, but I want to talk a little bit about another of the other issues. One is you talk a lot about how people as patients should interact with their doctors. Can we get into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, we've all had the experience where your doctor, comes up, you get a questionnaire or a health questionnaire, and one of the questions is, do you own a gun? So the question is, now what? What if you don't want to tell your doctor that you own a gun? It's none of his business, first of all, and second of all, in the age of electronic medical records, it's not private. That stuff is your insurance company gets it.
Which could affect your premiums potentially, right?
Maybe maybe even the government itself, if you have government insurance.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of
what's the impetus behind that question? How did it get included in standard intake protocols?
Well, you have to understand that medical academia is anti-gun. It's been that way for probably 30, 50 years. It's gotten worse and worse over time. But we all ask ourselves, why do they want to disarm us to begin with? And it's all part of that, leftist, disarm them, and then we can do what we want. They can't resist. Look what happened in Iran. Yeah. Right? All those people couldn't fight back. They were slaughtered. Why? Because they were all disordered.
Or in Ukraine.
You're
right.
You look at any of those places, and if you're disarmed, you're a subject, you're not a citizen.
Yeah.
And so, I think there's a lot of that involved. Because I think they, a lot of the public health people, they decided that they wanted to make guns a public health issue, and that guns are bad. They're the vector of death and destruction and crime and all this kind of stuff. And it's just the opposite, actually.
Yeah.
It's just the opposite. It's not the gun that's the problem. It's the criminal that's the problem.
Right. And I want to talk about that. You mentioned public health. I think I'll save this an in-depth discussion about public health for a separate podcast, but I'd like to talk about this concept for just a moment.
Yeah.
To me, that just the name itself, public health, is kind of a loaded concept.
Oh, sure it is, because everybody's for public health.
Everybody's for public health.
We all want to be healthy.
But there's also no such thing as public health, at least in my mind. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
Individual health.
That's right. There is no health of the public.
But when you live in a collective world, the government is involved in everything. And
Yeah.
public health becomes part of the government control over your life.
Right.
And so, as an independent citizen who's a firearms owner and somebody who advocates for Second Amendment stuff, that goes very much against the grain for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm very much against that. And in fact, the doctors, I don't know how many doctors have prevented people get shot at robberies.
Yeah.
I don't know how many, doctors who've convinced a criminal not to be a criminal.
You're right.
That's not what we do. What we do well is when the guy gets shot and they come into the ER, if they're alive, we can probably keep them alive.
Yeah.
Because our trauma system has done so well. In fact, some of the murder rates have gone down because the trauma system is so good that people who would have died survived.
Yeah.
And you look at some of these gangbangers, man, they got scars all over, and they've got their belly's been zipped open, and why? Because they've been shot and they've been saved, and they go back out and do it again.
Yeah.
And I personally have experienced that.
Right.
I worked at a trauma center at UC Davis in Sacramento, which is the trauma center for the northern half of California. So you can imagine the stuff that came in that place.
Yeah.
But you see people that survive that totally wouldn't have survived, 50 years ago.
Right. So public health, in my mind, is a lot like the phrase gun violence.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Guns don't commit gun violence, or don't commit violence, rather, and the public doesn't have health. You have health.
Right.
I have health.
I don't have
violence.
health right now. I'm going to cough here in a second. Still dealing with it.
Individuals commit violence. Individuals have health. By making it this, you sort of make this fake concept, right? This fake construct, and then that gives the government an excuse, an end to try to address that fake problem.
Oh, absolutely. Again, it's all about control.
It's about control.
It's all about control. And it's all about money, too. I mean, there are two publicly funded anti-gun public health things. There's one in California, there's one in New Jersey. One is with UC Davis, one's at Rutgers, and they're publicly funded, but they're going after your gun.
Yeah, but it takes away the personal responsibility from the equation. It takes public health says, okay, government, here's a problem we can address. Public health.
Yeah.
Right. And it takes individual accountability out of the health equation.
Yep.
Right. Same with gun violence. Gun violence is a fake problem the government can try to solve.
Yeah,
and it takes
guns aren't violent.
And it takes
guns aren't violent.
It takes individual responsibility and accountability out of the equation.
Yeah, it's all about the guy who's behind the gun, not the gun itself.
Right.
The gun is just a tool. It's inanimate. You put it on the table. It's not going to shoot.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the guy that picks it up and points it at you in the middle of a robbery. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And that's why doctors are not the proper people. It's criminologists, it's economists. They're the ones that should really be studying this stuff, not doctors.
Right.
Not really. We're not effective at coming up with the answers because our premise is the gun's the problem.
Right.
And if you start off with a false premise, all of your data is BS.
Yeah.
All your conclusions are biased and they're just not valid. Let's put it there.
Right. And if you start out with the premise that the public has health, right, everything from that premise is
like garbage in, garbage out.
Garbage in, garbage out. That's right. Well, I don't want to address, like I said, I don't want to address all the questions that the DRGO addresses, but what's maybe one other that we might chat about for just a moment?
We can go back to what do you do if your doctor asks you about your guns, because I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Okay.
So some of the things that you can do, one of which is you just don't answer the question or you can lie. Now, it's not good to lie to your doctor about most things, but you know what? As Tom Gresham says, it's not a sin to tell a lie if the person that's asking the question doesn't have the right to know.
No. Fair enough. Yeah.
And so I think it's fair to either not answer the question or whatever. Now, if they become persistent, you can basically fill the. Let's just say this: you can ask them, what's your training in this? What are your credentials to give me advice about firearms? Are you certified by some kind of organization in firearms? And of course, most doctors are not.
Mm-hmm.
I am. I'm a Massad Ayoob group instructor. I'm an NRA instructor. I'm a range master instructor. Okay, I can tell you that. I know about this. Okay, and if they keep really giving you a hard time, you can basically report them to the state medical board for something called a boundary violation. So a boundary violation is basically when the doctor pushes some type of an agenda that's not beneficial to the patient. And it's not in his interest, it's in the doctor's interest. Okay? Now, here's a really classic example of boundary violation. Having sex with your patient. That's a boundary violation, right?
Right.
That's not a boundary that should be crossed. It's the same thing here, and it's a very serious thing. So you report that to your state medical board, they will do an investigation, and the doctor has to answer.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal. Believe me, I know, because I've had had inquiries based, patients make a complaint and then we have to answer it.
Yeah.
That's part of the, the state medical board's job of making sure doctors are doing the right thing.
Right. And what relevance does whether or not I own a firearm have if I come to see you for a broken leg?
Exactly.
Right.
That's exactly, because they're going to say, oh, well, we want to give safety information. I said, look, I know more about gun safety than you'll ever know.
Yeah.
So let's just skip it and go on.
You don't ask if I have fire extinguishers in my home.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, sometimes they go down to pediatricians are really good about doing things like swimming pools, fire extinguishers.
Oh, for child safety.
Yeah, for child safety. But the problem is this: what's the advice they're going to give you? It's going to be lock your guns up, separate your ammo. Well, what happens if somebody breaks into your house in the middle of the night and decides wants to kill your family? You can't get to your guns.
Yeah.
So here's another thing I asked them. Well, doctor, does your insurance company know that you're practicing outside your scope of medical practice and that you're giving advice that you're not qualified to do? And if I'm harmed by following your advice, will your insurance company cover you for that? All of a sudden, their eyes get really big.
Yeah.
And their face gets kind of pale, and they start thinking about, maybe I should be doing this. So these are the weapons that you have at your disposal.
Yeah.
That you can use. There's also there's a form that a sheriff in Los Angeles County put out years ago, and I can't remember his name offhand, but it's basically a form that you have the doctor fill out that specifies what their training is in firearms and that, and you hand that to them, and then the doctor's gonna go,
Yeah. I want to be a devil's advocate here for a moment. So I think part of the issue is bias, but part of the bias stems from, I think, a lack of information that many doctors have about the effectiveness of firearms or the utility of firearms, right? So doctors, they would say, well, we're asking about guns for the same reason that we ask about fire extinguishers or pools or whatever, because we see the relative risk of a home invasion as relatively minor as compared to the child accessing a firearm and hurting themselves or others from inappropriate access. Can you address that issue and what it takes to sort of correct that misconception within the medical community?
First of all, none of us want children to be dead.
Yep.
Okay, and we are in agreement that guns should be locked up away from children.
Yes.
But also, they should be accessible to the adult who needs to. So, we advocate for things like rapid access safes, things like that. You can have it at the bedside. You press the buttons or read a thick thumbprint or whatever, and it pops open and it's available. But they want to get rid of guns, period.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want you to have a gun in the home. And they quote some of the old literature that's been disproven, about you're 3 times higher risk of dying from a gun in your home than if you didn't have one. So it's all been
Does DRGO have papers or articles on that issue?
we have some of the stuff in there. It's probably referenced in some of our articles.
Okay.
But there's a lot of, there's so much in there right now that I don't think I can go back and read it all. My brain would explode.
There is a lot of great content. But here's going back to the public health issue. They want to get rid of all guns. And this goes back to the responsible gun ownership, Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership. You're talking about safely storing firearms. You're talking about not making firearms accessible to children, right? That's something that all responsible gun owners care about.
Absolutely.
But also, they're treating you as part of this public health, right? So they don't care about you in particular, or the risk to you, or the utility you may get from having a firearm for self-defense or defense of your family. They care about the broader public health. It's a collective mentality.
Exactly.
So they see on balance that, or they perceive on balance that if guns were eliminated, that'd be better for everybody, even though it's not better for you in particular.
Well, here's the thing here's the dirty little secret, okay? When they look at the studies of quote unquote gun violence, they ever include defensive gun uses in those studies?
No.
And so they say, 30,000 people a year are killed by guns, and of course half of them at least are suicides.
Yeah.
Right? But they don't talk about the 2.4 million defensive gun uses that stop criminals, that stop murders, that stop, maiming and stuff. And that's the dirty secret.
Yeah.
Is that they only look at one side of the coin. They never look at the other side. So there's no balance in their perspective.
And even if you don't believe the 2.4 million number, because they often attack the sources and the credibility of the people, they never attack the numbers.
Right.
They attack the source of the numbers. But even if you don't believe that number, the numbers, the most conservative estimates are in the hundreds of thousands.
And which is still
Far
magnitude higher than the amount of.
That's right.
And Gary Kleck looked at all these numbers. He's a criminologist, and in fact, he went back and looked at the CDC had done a second survey. He was looking for some stuff, and he came upon a survey that was never published, which confirmed a lot of his numbers.
Okay.
So this stuff has been validated, and I think that when you look at those studies, the data is there.
Yeah.
And it's repeatable over separate years. So they are representative samples, but they're pretty. It's pretty convincing that those numbers are fact.
If somebody wants to join DRGO as a member, obviously they can go to the website, and I'm going to link to the page to join DRGO. Is it a donation, or are there any benefits to the membership?
Well,
do you have access to certain different?
We ask you to participate too.
Okay.
You can write articles. You can.
Oh, nice.
You can do stuff. I started off, because I wanted to learn how to testify and to try to, be an advocate. So, yeah, it's something you can be. It's participatory if you want to do that.
Yeah, and I know you've got a few other great resources here too. One of the benefits is you get a discount on USCCA membership.
If that's valid anymore.
Okay.
I think they withdrew that about a year ago.
Okay. The other is you've got this resource here to help connect people with doctors who respect the right to keep and bear arms.
Right. It's called 28doc.com, and so you basically fill out what you're looking for, where you're at, etc. And then we try to connect doctors that are part of our organization with you to try to, the problem is we don't have enough doctors that are so it's kind of a hit or miss thing.
Okay.
And so if you're in the healthcare professions and you want to become a participating doctor, it's great. If you're afraid that you're going to have a searchable website, it's not searchable.
Okay.
It's basically, you send us a request, we look at our list, we match them up. It's not something that you go on and go look for a doctor.
Okay.
So even if you're a healthcare professional and you're a little concerned as you work for an organization that may not be supportive of your Second Amendment rights, you can still participate.
Okay. Excellent. Well, is there anything else, any other source or resource that you'd like to point out to direct people to other than the website?
The website's probably the best place. We do have a lot of good Facebook posts and stuff.
Okay.
And a lot of times we're addressing some of those more recent article stuff on the Facebook.
Okay.
So, and it's, I think it's DRGO/SAF, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
For the Facebook.
I'll try to find that and link to that in the show notes.
If you just put a doctor's response upon our, you'll find it.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent.
This computers are smarter than
That's right. That's right. Especially with the, sort of the advent of AI and sort of its advancement.
not only smarter but faster too.
Yeah. I'm curious. A lot of doctors I know are using AI transcription type services to draft their notes.
They're trying to have me do that, but you know what? I can do my electronic medical record faster
Okay.
because I don't have as much narrative as a lot of other people do. Like internal medicine doctors, they have long narratives and histories, and for that, the AR is probably helpful.
Yeah.
But it's really just a smart way of it's a smart tape recording.
Yeah. Yeah.
Still have to take the thing and put it into the notes and stuff.
Yeah.
I can dictate it just as fast as the AI can.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. We were talking about how to interact with doctors earlier, and you were saying that people could ask what sort of credentials or expertise that
Right.
your doctor has, relating to firearms. And if they're using the dictation or the transcription, the AI service, I assume that's recorded somehow.
Yeah, it's recorded and then transcribed.
So even if it doesn't end up in their note, there's still a record there somewhere. I would assume. Okay. So.
I mean, I'm telling you, medical records are forever.
Yeah.
And they're accessible to. It depends on who's. The government, I think, will probably always be willing to access your medical records.
Yeah.
Your insurance companies, for sure, will be accessing your medical records because that requires you need the medical records for payment.
Right.
And if they're gonna pay the doctor, they want to document the service we provide.
Yeah.
So documentation is how we get paid
Right. Right. Well, Dr. Edeen, I really appreciate you coming on the Forge of Freedom podcast. Always great to see you in person.
Have a cigar tonight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Before it starts raining tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. It was beautiful weather today, but hopefully people can make it out. And that this episode will not be, it's not being recorded live, but it'll be released sometime next week, more than likely. I am recording some episodes live, but this one will come out because it's kind of an evergreen topic, right?
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's always a good thing to know. Again, if you go to our website, if you have, questions about doctors and guns, you should be able to find some interesting stuff in there.
Yeah.
Like when there's, one of the things that I was very interested in that kind of got me is active shooters in hospitals. Because that's a real issue in my book.
Yeah.
And in fact, I even wrote the definitive paper that USCCA magazine published in 2017, I think it was.
Yeah.
About active shooters and random world in hospitals. So, there's stuff in there, and that's also reposted on the DRGO website.
Okay. Well, in most hospitals, unfortunately, are gun-free zones too, right? So they're soft targets. That's right. Yeah. Well, Doctor, thanks again.
Right.
Really appreciate your time. Great chatting with you. I hope everybody enjoyed the podcast. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe to help us spread the message of freedom. As always, you can find the podcast on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, X, and on all the most popular streaming platforms. Until next time, remember, you're the Forge of Freedom.